Corporation and Community Service webinar, collecting high-quality performance data. I'm Stephanie Reitzman, Oregon State Director, and I'll be facilitating this session with my colleague, James Griffin. James is a program specialist with the Arizona State Office. During will help you plan for the data collection process. We'll identify and compare potential data sources, the data collection methods, and provide tips on creating data collection instruments. All data guidance will be in alignment with the national performance measures. Sample grantee organization, Hancock County, to explain the value of strong data collection. Webinar, you'll be able to effectively plan for the data collection process, and in doing so, obtain high-quality data for progress reports, compliance monitoring visits, and for your ongoing program improvement. So spend about 15 minutes or so walking through data collection process, and then James will take over and spend about 10 minutes discussing frequent instrument design challenges in case you're going to be creating your own data collection instruments. And then finally, we'll conclude with just a brief summary of the session. So in the webinar, we're going to talk about the process for collecting data. So keep in mind what we discussed on the elements of data quality, as they'll really be the overarching framework for you to reflect on as we discuss the process. So we're going to lecture you on how to do data collection. We decided to use a case study to explain how to actually put it into practice. So our sample case follows Hancock County, a community in an area that is prone to natural disasters that requires food distribution of regular, well-balanced meals to displaced individuals during emergencies. Background information on Hancock County. The count reports that in 2013, 16% of the population of Hancock County lives below the federal poverty level, and more than 74,000 children. Hancock County is prone to numerous disasters. In 2013, Hancock County experienced 5 tornadoes, 3 significant flooding episodes, and more than 52 house fires. These disasters displace individuals and families and make it challenging for those individuals to consume regular, well-balanced meals. And Hancock County Food Bank System reports the numbers of families requesting food assistance during times of emergency has grown nearly 40% since 2010. So we've got the need in Hancock County. How is this RSVP program going to address that need? According to the work plan, 64 RSVP volunteers will serve as needed at 12 Hancock County food distribution sites. They'll perform the necessary duties to sustain the daily operations of the emergency feeding programs. Duties include unloading deliveries, stocking shelves, registering and servicing clients, preparing and serving meals, and even coordinating food drives. So as required by Performance Measure H10, this group notes in the work plan that the service activities are for emergency food assistance and really not meant to designate routine, ongoing help in meeting a family's needs. Anticipated output and outcome that Hancock County have selected. As you can see, they've selected H10 for the output, which measures the number of individuals receiving emergency food from organizations. So in everyday terms, this means that individuals will receive emergency food assistance through one or more of the food distribution efforts. Hancock has selected H12 as their anticipated outcome. Outcome really captures the number of individuals that reported increased food security of themselves and their children as a result of CNCS-supported services. So in everyday terms, we're saying that because they received assistance, individuals will be better able to feed themselves and their families during emergencies, ultimately increasing their food security. So information on Hancock County consists of the following questions. What will Hancock County collect data to understand their program's effectiveness? What is CS looking for? How can Hancock County ensure their project is in compliance with data collection and performance measures? These two questions, we can figure out our key measurement question, Hancock County's key measurement question, and to consider what you think their measurement question should be. The key question really should be, individuals experience increased food security because of the services provided. The measure, has Hancock County increased food security, basically tries to answer the general question, did we achieve the intended outcome? This general question is the basis for all outcome measurement questions. So now we want to measure, let's talk about how to actually collect the data to answer our key measurement question. Hancock County is trying to figure out how to collect the data needed for their performance measures. Where to begin? Hancock County and other CNCS grantees should first begin by identifying a data source. A data source is a person, group, or organization that can provide the information needed to answer a specific measurement question. So to identify data sources, first, determine if CNCS requires a specific data source for the performance measure selected. It will be found in the performance measure instructions for each program on the network. If there is a specific data source for the selected performance measure, you'll want to identify a list of potential data sources that can answer your measurement question. Examples include program beneficiaries, station supervisors, and volunteers. Consider the pros and cons of each potential data source. It can be helpful to make a table listing each potential data source along with their pros and cons. After doing the pros and cons of each data source, you select your preferred data source. The people have actually experienced or witnessed the change and be able to answer your measurement question. Gain access to this data source. If the data source is not accessible, then consider others from your table. So, county, who might the data source be? Take a moment to consider your response. In Hancock County, program beneficiaries who are receiving the support from the grant funding are likely the best data source. In this example, CNCS actually requires that the data be collected from the adult family member who received the services. Although this is a CNCS requirement, we'll discuss the pros and cons in more detail on the next slide to help you complete this exercise for other measures. And again, this screenshot here will show you exactly who the data source should be. So CNCS has a required data source for this measure. Hancock County was able to easily identify their data source by referring to the performance measure instructions available on the Knowledge Network. If a particular data source is not required, Hancock County could make a list of pros and cons to determine the best data source. So what are some pros and cons of potential data sources in this example? Well, program beneficiaries are really in the best position to describe their family's food security. While volunteers may observe the number of individuals receiving food assistance, they may not actually know the food security situation of those receiving assistance, and they may only observe a subset of program beneficiaries. The challenge of using data from program beneficiaries is they may be less open to answering questions about their personal situation. Hancock County will need to carefully consider the data collection methods in order to minimize the perception of invasiveness about the beneficiary's personal situation. We'll discuss data collection methods in more detail on the next slide. On a data source, the next step is to determine the method for collecting that data. Some performance measures have required data collection methods, and some even require the use of a specific instrument. Be sure to check your performance measure instructions before considering other methods. So available to collect data, you can see some of those on the screen here. Methods are not used when reporting on senior core performance measures. However, your organization may consider using them for other evaluation purposes or for other programs in your agency. We'll cover just a few here, but be sure to check out the data collection handout available in the library for more information on some of these other methods. So the survey method involves having program participants complete a written or online form containing a set of questions. Develop a survey, reflect on your audience need. For example, in the Hancock County example, if a survey was selected, it may not make sense to implement that survey online if respondents do not have access to the internet. Some, such as the foster grandparent program, use standardized tests to assess students' knowledge of academic subjects. Standardized tests have been validated nationally using a randomly selected population of students. Also, many of our Senior Corps projects use tracking sheets. These are typically used to document service delivery and are primarily used to track outputs. This would be most appropriate if you selected the volunteer audience for your data collection, as they can track and record service delivery on your behalf. So we have selected the H12 outcome and therefore plans to measure the number of individuals that report increased food security of themselves and their children as a result of the CNCS supported services. So in that, what detection method would be best for Hancock County to use? Take and consider this question and formulate your answer. So the correct A, say. First, CNCS performance measure instructions require grantees reporting on H12 to use a survey. As you can see here, the instructions even provide sample questions that can be used in the survey. Remember, sample instruments and questions may be available for other performance measures that you have selected. So assume that CNCS did not require a survey for this performance measure. For reasons you may choose to do a survey. Having program participants submit information in written or online form will provide important quantitative data about how many individuals received emergency food assistance. We'll ask follow-up questions on the service provided and will help you reach all program participants as opposed to a sample of the participants. So why am I clear of some of the other data collection methods? The survey is the required method. Additionally, focus groups would provide valuable information about how individuals deal with food security issues, but may not really capture the quantitative information about the number of individuals receiving assistance or experiencing increased food security. It would also be very difficult to schedule focus groups with a large number of program participants. So interviews may provide interesting information but lack quantitative data. It may also be difficult to schedule interviews with large numbers of program participants. Please standardize tests that assess knowledge of an academic subject would not make sense for Hancock County, since we're really looking for a change in condition rather than knowledge. Okay, identify the data source and data collection method. It's time to establish a schedule for collecting and reviewing that data. The schedule should include who will collect the data, what instrument they will use, and when data needs to be collected. Develop your schedule and ensure that you consult with program staff, volunteer stations, and other stakeholders in the planning process to determine the best dates for collecting that data. To work backwards from reporting deadlines to figure out a schedule that allows you to collect the data in a timely manner. The schedule should include time for you to collect, review, and report on that data. The schedule with your team so that everyone knows what's going on. Use a format that works for you and your organization. As you see here, Hancock County's sample schedule allows the program director to identify the instrument, method, data source, and persons responsible for collecting data. It includes placeholders for key dates to ensure the program has built in time for collecting, analyzing, reporting data, as well as time for reflecting on that data for continuous program improvement. Data source, method, and schedule. The step is a measurement instrument that will answer your performance measurement questions. There are many ways to look for instruments. If you're doing outcomes for C&CS priorities and performance measures, then the first place to look is the performance measure section of the Knowledge Network, which we found at the website listed on the screen. Other sources, such as internet search engines, to find data collection instruments. If you're looking in a particular field for a while, you may already know something about the field's best measurement practices. Your colleagues and look at recent research to get ideas about appropriate measurement approaches. Look at the for your intervention. How outcome been measured by similar programs? Ask in your professional network what they are using, especially if you're seeking instruments in an unfamiliar service arena. The best to measure an outcome are often specific to a particular focus area or intervention. And now pass it over to James to talk just a little bit more about data collection instruments.
Thanks, Stephanie. During part of this webinar, we will discuss frequent instrument design challenges. Mind what we discussed on the elements of data quality, as they will be the overarching framework for you to reflect on as we discuss the challenges. Continue to use Hancock County as an example in the part of the webinar as well. Checking an instrument to see if it provides the necessary data to fulfill the performance measurement requirement, it is important to look for other potential design issues that can affect data quality. This list of design issues is not complete, but is simply a start to some of the issues that you might face if you are creating your own data collection instruments. Each will be explained in more detail on the next slides. As you do the examples, keep in mind that they are samples and may not reflect the questions that should be asked to evaluate each performance measure. Keep in mind that there are many sample instruments available to you on the Knowledge Network. Development of a new instrument may not be needed. For example, for SEP, specific instruments are required. First, here's an example that demonstrates a crowded layout question. It may look like there are a lot of words on this slide, but that is actually intentional to demonstrate crowded layout. In the labeled problem, note that the crowded layout makes it difficult to read and potentially confusing to identify where to respond to the question. The layout of the question labeled solution is not crowded, making it much easier to read and understand. Making questions easy to understand and respond to is important when collecting high-quality data. This is double-barreled questions. You may have heard of double-barrel questions in other courses you have taken. A double-barrel question is one in which two questions are actually combined into one, making it harder to answer. Hancock County includes a statement, "In the last 6 months, I worried about whether my food would run out and how I would feed my child," and clients to respond. Questions ask about whether food would run out and how I would feed a child is very difficult to answer in one question. Is to separate the questions, asking whether the client was worried that his or her food would run out, and then how he or she would feed their child if applicable. Biased questions happen when you ask a question that implies an answer. For example, the top question of how much did your food consumption improve as a result of support provided by the organization introduces a subtle positive bias by framing the issue in terms of improvement. To ask this question would be, in the last 6 months, did you or a member of your household ever not eat for a whole day because there wasn't enough money for food? This asks the questions in a neutral way, so it is more likely to yield unbiased responses. Next is abstract or broad questions, which are hard to answer and don't provide quality data. The first question, do you enjoy the food provided, is rather and abstract, so responses may not be very meaningful. However, the second question, would you recommend the program to others, does a good job of gauging program effectiveness by asking the question in a concrete, action-oriented way. Questions that do not use structured responses may provide valuable data, but often will not provide meaningful results that demonstrate your achievement of a performance measure. For example, the question asks respondents to write in their own answers. This open-ended response format increases the burden on respondents to answer the question, when a box response would be sufficient. In order to track the results on such a question, and it is also more likely to result in the question being left blank. Best to provide a response structure like the second question, with statements best describe the food eaten in your house in the past 6 months. It is important that for information, open-ended response questions are effective, but to know which types of data collection questions these are effective with. Is response options with overlaps or gaps. The question contains response options that are confusing. Specifically, the first two response options overlap, and the response scales have different ranges for each answer. This is clear response options that include all valid choices between 0 and 5. Unscaled in two questions will result in inaccurate and ineffective data collection. The scale in the first question contains more positive than negative ratings, so it is biased towards positive responses. The scale of the second question is evenly balanced between negative and positive responses, so it is more likely to produce unbiased responses. We have discussed are just a sample of some of the challenges faced when developing a data collection instrument. This is collecting high-quality data. As described in our objectives, we focused how to plan for the data collection process and obtain high-quality data for progress reports, compliance monitoring visits, and ongoing program improvement. To note, to stay current on data collection methods and tools, remember to visit the Knowledge Network. Join us for the webinar to discuss collecting high-quality data.